The beast stood in the middle of the metal cage, bigger than 3 grown men stacked on top of each other. Its skin looked like black glass with purple lights moving underneath. When it moved, the lights changed colors like an angry rainbow. The alien scientists called it a Vorthak, and they said it was the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. Commander Jake Morrison pressed his face against the thick window that separated him from the monster. He had seen many scary things during his years in space, but nothing like this. The creature's 6 eyes, each as big as dinner plates, looked around the room with intelligence that made Jake's skin crawl. This was not just a wild animal. This was something that could think, plan, and hate. "Another team is going in," said Highkeeper Veltar, the blue-skinned alien who led the research project. His 4 arms moved in nervous patterns as he spoke. The translator box on his chest turned his clicking sounds into English words. "Perhaps this time we will succeed." Jake watched as 5 Zephyrian warriors entered the cage. Each warrior stood 8 feet tall with blue skin and muscles like steel cables. They carried weapons that could stun a charging elephant, but Jake had seen what happened to the last team that tried to control the beast. 2 of them never came home. The Vorthak turned toward the new warriors and made a sound like grinding, metal mixed with thunder. The purple lights under its skin turned bright red. Its mouth opened to show teeth that could bite through spaceship walls. The warriors raised their stunning weapons and fired blue beams of energy at the creature. The beams hit the Vorthak and did nothing. The creature took 1 step forward, then another. The warriors fired again, this time with weapons that made loud screeching sounds. The beast shook its massive head and kept walking toward them. "Fall back," the lead warrior shouted into his radio. "Fall back now." The 5 warriors ran toward the exit as fast as their long legs could carry them. The Vorthak watched them go, then sat down in the middle of the cage like it was bored. The red lights under its skin faded back to purple. 3 months, Veltar said, his clicking voice full of sadness. 3 months we have tried everything. Sonic weapons, neural dampeners, sleep gas, fear pheromones, pleasure chemicals. Nothing works. The creature ignores pain and cannot be bribed with food or comfort. Jake nodded but did not look away from the beast. "What about the other idea? The one about killing it?" "The council grows impatient," Veltar admitted. "They say if we cannot control it in 1 more week, we must destroy it. But that would be a great loss. Vorthaks have never been tamed, but if we could learn their secrets, think of what we could accomplish. They are stronger than tanks, smarter than computers, and they can heal from almost any wound." A small voice interrupted their conversation. "Daddy, why is everyone so scared of the big puppy?" Jake looked down to see his 8-year-old daughter Amy standing beside him. Her blonde hair was messy from sleep, and she wore her favorite pink pajamas with cartoon spaceships on them. She had been staying on the space station while Jake finished his diplomatic work, but she was supposed to be in bed. "Amy, what are you doing here? You should be sleeping." "I heard the loud noises," Amy said, pressing her small hands against the thick window. "Is that why everyone is running around?" Veltar's 4 eyes focused on the human child. His mandibles clicked in what Jake knew was alien laughter. "Young human, that is no puppy. That is a Vorthak, the most feared creature in known space. It has killed many warriors and will kill many more." Amy ignored the alien and kept looking at the beast. "But look at how it sits. Dogs sit like that when they are confused. And see how its ears move? My friend Lucy's dog does that when he hears something interesting." "It does not have ears," Veltar said. "Those are sensory organs that detect heat and electrical fields." "Same thing," Amy said with the confidence that only children have. "And look at its eyes. They are not angry eyes. They are lonely eyes." Jake looked at the creature again, trying to see what his daughter saw. The Vorthak was indeed sitting in a way that reminded him of a dog, with its massive body upright and its head tilted slightly to one side. But surely that was just coincidence. "Amy, this is not a safe place for you. We need to get you back to your room." "But Daddy, I want to watch the puppy, it looks sad." The Vorthak suddenly stood up and walked to the wall closest to where they were standing. It pressed its snout against the metal bars and made a soft rumbling sound. The purple lights under its skin changed to a gentle blue color that Jake had never seen before. Interesting, Veltar muttered, checking his instruments. The creature's emotional indicators have shifted. Fear and aggression levels are dropping. Curiosity and... What is this? The readings make no sense. What do you mean? Jake asked. According to these instruments, the creature is displaying patterns we associate with contentment and social bonding. But that is impossible. Vorthax are solitary hunters. They do not bond with anything. Amy giggled and waved at the beast through the window. Hi there, big guy. Are you lonely in that room all by yourself? The Vorthak tilted its head the other way and made the rumbling sound again. This time it was softer, almost like purring. This cannot be happening, Veltar said, checking his instruments again. The creature has been aggressive for 3 months. It has attacked everyone who came near it. But now, it is acting like a friendly dog, Jake finished. He put his hand on Amy's shoulder. Sweetie, what do you see when you look at that creature? Amy thought for a moment, the way children do when adults ask them serious questions. I see something that misses its family. Something that does not understand why it is in a cage. Something that wants a friend but does not know how to ask. The Vorthak moved closer to the window and sat down again. It placed one massive paw against the metal wall, directly across from where Amy was standing. The gesture looked almost like it was trying to touch her hand through the barrier. Fascinating, Veltar whispered. The creature has never shown interest in any individual before. It treats all other beings as either threats or prey, but with the small human, it is different, Jake said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. Amy, has this ever happened before? With animals, I mean? All the time, Amy said matter-of-factly. Mean dogs become nice when I talk to them. Scared cats let me pet them. Even the grumpy old horse at Uncle Pete's farm likes me now. More scientists and officials were gathering in the observation room now, drawn by reports of the creature's strange behavior. They spoke in whispers and pointed at their instruments, all showing the same impossible readings. Sir, one of Veltar's assistants said, the creature's stress hormones have dropped to levels we have never recorded. Its brain activity suggests deep relaxation, almost like sleep, but it remains fully alert and focused on the human child. Jake watched as Amy continued to wave and talk to the beast through the window. The Vorthak followed her movements with all 6 eyes, and the blue lights under its skin pulsed in a steady, peaceful rhythm. What are you thinking, baby? Jake asked his daughter. Amy looked up at him with the serious expression she wore when she was trying to explain something important to adults. I think he wants to come out and play. I think he has been in that room for too long, and he is getting cranky like I do when I have to stay inside all day. The implications of her words hit everyone in the room at the same time. Here was a creature that had resisted every form of control known to galactic science, but it was responding to an 8-year-old human girl as if she were an old friend. Perhaps, Veltar said slowly, we have been approaching this problem in entirely the wrong way. The alarm started screaming at 3 a.m. Jake jumped out of his bed and ran toward the sounds, his heart pounding with fear. The emergency lights painted everything red, and people were running in the hallways. He knew something terrible had happened. Sir, we have a problem, Lieutenant Ben Cooper said as he met Jake in the corridor. Your daughter is missing from her room. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. What do you mean missing? Security cameras show her leaving her quarters 20 minutes ago. She used the maintenance tunnels to avoid the guards. They ran toward the research center, following the trail of open doors and disabled security systems. Jake could not believe that his 8-year-old daughter had managed to sneak past trained soldiers and electronic locks, but Amy had always been clever with puzzles and finding ways to go where she wanted. She could not have gotten into the containment area, Ben said as they ran. Those doors need special codes and handprints. But when they reached the main research center, they saw that the impossible had happened. The massive blast doors that protected the Vorthak's cage were standing wide open. Through the opening, they could see Amy walking slowly toward the creature that had killed trained warriors. "Amy, no!" Jake screamed, running toward the manual controls. But Highkeeper Veltar caught him with two of his strong arms. "Do not move too fast," Veltar hissed. "Quick movements will make it think you are attacking. The creature will kill her instantly if it feels threatened." Jake watched in horror as his little girl stepped into the cage with the most dangerous beast in the galaxy. She looked so small in her pink pajamas, like a flower walking into the mouth of a dragon. The Vorthak turned its massive head toward her, and all 6 of its dinner-plate eyes focused on the tiny human. The creature's mouth opened, showing teeth that could cut through steel. A deep rumbling sound came from its throat. The same sound that had come before it killed the other handlers. Jake tried to break free from Veltar's grip, but the alien was too strong. "Let me go," Jake said. "I have to save her. If you run in there now, the creature will attack both of you," Veltar said. "We must wait and see what happens." Amy stood perfectly still in front of the beast. She did not run or scream or cry. She just looked up at the creature with her bright blue eyes and tilted her head to one side the same way the Vorthak was tilting its head. "Hello, big guy," Amy said in her soft, clear voice. "You are scared too, are you not?" The rumbling sound stopped. The creature's mouth closed, and the angry red lights under its skin changed to yellow and green. It took one step closer to Amy, lowering its enormous head until it was at her eye level. Everyone in the observation room held their breath. "You do not want to hurt anyone," Amy continued, her voice calm and gentle. "You just want to go home." The Vorthak made a different sound now, softer and higher than before. Its 6 eyes blinked slowly, and the lights under its skin shifted to colors that Veltar had never seen in 3 months of studying the creature. "What is it doing?" Jake whispered. "I do not know," Veltar admitted, checking his instruments frantically. "The creature's brain patterns are unlike anything in our records. It appears to be listening." Amy reached out with one small hand, moving very slowly. The Vorthak watched her hand get closer and closer to its snout. When her palm touched the creature's nose, something amazing happened. The lights under its skin turned a warm, peaceful blue, and it made a sound like a giant cat purring. "There you go," Amy said, gently stroking the creature's snout. "You are not scary at all. You are just lonely." The Vorthak closed its eyes and leaned into her touch. The purring sound got louder, and its tail, which had been stiff with anger, began to move back and forth like a dog's tail when it is happy. "This is impossible," Veltar muttered, staring at his instruments. "The creature's aggression levels have dropped to 0. Its stress hormones are at the lowest levels we have ever recorded. It is displaying bonding behaviors that we did not know existed in its species." More people crowded into the observation room. Scientists, soldiers, and station officials all pressed against the windows to see the impossible sight. A human child was petting the galaxy's most feared predator like it was a friendly house cat. "Amy," Jake called through the communication system. "Are you okay, baby?" Amy looked toward the window and smiled. "I am fine, Daddy. He is really nice once you get to know him. I think he has been lonely for a long time." She turned back to the Vorthak and began talking to it in the same voice she used with hurt animals back on Earth. "What is your real name? I bet it is not Vorthak. That sounds like what people call you when they are afraid of you." The creature made a series of soft clicking sounds, almost like it was trying to talk back to her. Amy nodded as if she understood every word. "I will call you Blue," she said, "because of the pretty blue lights under your skin. Do you like that name?" "Blue." The Vorthak rumbled happily and gently nudged Amy with his snout. She giggled and scratched, behind what looked like his ears, though Veltar insisted they were sensory organs. "How did she get in there?" Jake asked Lieutenant Cooper. "We are still checking the security footage, but it looks like she figured out how to use the emergency override codes. She must have been watching the technicians and memorized the sequence." "An 8-year-old child broke through our most secure containment system?" Veltar asked, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "Amy has always been good with numbers and patterns," Jake said, pride mixing with his fear. "But how did she know the Codes would work? Through the communication system, they could hear Amy talking to Blue about her life on Earth. She told him about her pet dog Buddy, about her school friends, and about how she missed her mother who had died 2 years ago. Blue listened to every word, his head tilted attentively. "I know what it feels like to miss someone," Amy said, her voice getting softer. "Sometimes I feel so sad and angry that I want to break things too. But breaking things does not make the sadness go away." Blue made a low whimpering sound and gently placed his massive head against Amy's chest. She wrapped her small arms around his snout and hugged him. "It is okay to be sad," she whispered. "But you do not have to be sad alone anymore." The observation room was completely quiet, except for the soft sounds of the little girl comforting the giant beast. Some of the alien scientists were making notes, others were checking their instruments, but most were just staring in wonder at something that should have been impossible. "Sir," one of Veltar's assistants said, "we are receiving priority messages from research stations across the galaxy. Word is spreading about what happened here. Everyone wants to know how a human child did what our best scientists could not do." Jake watched his daughter sit down on the floor of the cage while Blue curled up beside her like an enormous puppy. The creature was being careful not to hurt her with his size and weight, adjusting his position so she could lean against his warm side. "Maybe we have been thinking about this all wrong," Jake said. "Maybe the question is not how to control these creatures. Maybe the question is how to understand them." Amy looked up at the observation window and waved. "Daddy, can Blue come out and play? I think he is tired of being in this little room." The request sent a wave of panic through the room. Let the Vorthak out of its cage? The idea was terrifying, but looking at the peaceful scene in front of them, Jake began to wonder if the most dangerous thing in the galaxy might actually be the safest creature his daughter had ever met. "What do you think?" he asked Veltar. The alien scientist looked at his instruments one more time, then at the impossible sight of a human child and a Vorthak sharing a quiet moment together. "I think," Veltar said slowly, "that we are about to learn something new about both of our species." News of what happened at Kepler Station spread across the galaxy faster than light travel. Within 3 days, ships from dozens of different worlds were arriving at the station. They all carried the same cargo. Dangerous creatures that no one had ever been able to control. Dr. Lisa Carter was one of the first to arrive. She came from Earth with a team of scientists who studied how different species talked to each other. Lisa had spent 15 years trying to understand alien animals, but she had never seen anything like what Amy Morrison had done. "It is not magic," Lisa explained to Jake as they watched Amy play with Blue in the station's main cargo bay. "Your daughter is reading body language and emotions in ways that work across species. She sees things that we miss." Blue was lying on his side, while Amy used his massive paw as a pillow. The creature that had terrified trained warriors was now making soft humming sounds, while the little girl read him a story from her tablet. His bioluminescent patches glowed with gentle colors that changed with the tone of her voice. "But how is that possible?" Jake asked. "Blue is from a completely different world. He evolved under different conditions with different needs." "That is what makes it so amazing," Lisa said, making notes on her tablet. "Some emotions seem to be universal: fear, loneliness, the need for companionship. Amy is speaking a language that goes deeper than words." The first test came when Captain Rex Hawkins arrived with something from the Andorian sector. His ship carried 3 crystalline spider beasts that had killed dozens of handlers. Each creature was the size of a small car, with 8 legs made of living crystalline mandibles that could cut diamonds. "These things destroyed our mining colony on Kepler 7, Captain Hawkins explained as his crew unloaded the special containment units. "We managed to capture 3 of them, but no one can get within 50 feet without being attacked." The spider beasts were placed in a large containment room with walls made of reinforced steel. Through the observation windows, everyone could see the creatures pacing back and forth, their crystal legs making sharp clicking sounds on the metal floor. When anyone approached, they would rear up on their hind legs and make threatening gestures with their razor-sharp mandibles. "I want to talk to them," Amy said, pressing her face against the window. "Absolutely not," Jake said. "These are not like Blue. They are smaller but much faster. If they attack, there will be no time to save you. But Amy was already studying the creatures the way she had studied Blue. She watched how they moved, how they held their bodies, how they reacted to different sounds and movements. They are scared, she said finally. Look at how they keep touching each other with their legs. They are trying to comfort each other. Dr. Carter looked more carefully at the spider beasts and realized Amy was right. The creatures were not just pacing randomly. They were staying close together, their crystal legs intertwining in what looked like embraces. They are pack animals, Lisa said with surprise. Our record said they were solitary hunters, but they are clearly social creatures. Can I go in? Amy asked. I think they need a friend. After much debate and against the protests of everyone except Lisa, Amy was allowed to enter the containment room. She sat down on the floor just inside the door and waited. The 3 spider beasts stopped pacing and turned to look at her. Hello, Amy said softly. I know you are afraid. This place is strange and scary and you miss your home. The largest spider beast took a step toward her, its mandibles clicking nervously. Amy did not move or make any threatening gestures. She just sat there with her hands in her lap, speaking in the same gentle voice she used with all frightened animals. You make beautiful things, do you not? Amy continued. I heard that you spin crystal webs. That sounds amazing. I wish I could see one. The spider beast tilted its head, and its clicking changed to a softer, more musical sound. It moved closer, and Amy could see that its crystal body was not just clear, but filled with tiny lights that moved like captured stars. You are like living jewels, Amy said with wonder. You are the most beautiful things I have ever seen. The spider beast came closer still, until it was only a few feet away. Then it did something that made everyone in the observation room gasp. It began to spin. Crystal threads emerged from spinnerets on its abdomen, but these were not the deadly cutting wires that had sliced through mining equipment. These threads were delicate and beautiful, glowing with soft light as they formed intricate patterns in the air. You are making art, Amy said with delight. You are showing me how talented you are. The other 2 spider beasts joined in, and soon the air was filled with crystal threads that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Amy clapped her hands in appreciation, and the creatures' clicking became faster and more musical. They are not making weapons, Dr. Carter said, amazed. They are making decorations. They are showing off for her. Within an hour, Amy was sitting in the middle of a crystal web that looked like a fairy tale palace. The spider beasts had woven a complex structure around her, with her as the honored guest at the center. They clicked and chimed to each other in what was clearly a language, and Amy responded with words and gestures that seemed to make perfect sense to them. How does she do it? Captain Hawkins asked, shaking his head in disbelief. These creatures killed 37 of my people. She does not see them as monsters, Lisa explained. She sees them as individuals with feelings and needs. She treats them with respect instead of fear. The next ship to arrive brought an even bigger challenge. Commander Zara Knox of the Alliance fleet carried a single creature that was considered the most dangerous predator in known space. It was called a Voidwalker, and it came from the dark spaces between galaxies. The Voidwalker was kept in a special containment unit that blocked all light and sound. According to the reports, it had destroyed 3 research stations and killed over 200 scientists. It existed partially outside normal space-time, making it almost impossible to contain or study. This thing is not like the others, Commander Knox warned as her crew prepared the containment unit. It does not just kill, it consumes. It feeds on fear and pain, and it grows stronger with each victim. The creature was placed in a special chamber that could contain its reality warping abilities. When the lights were turned on, everyone could see why it was so feared. The Voidwalker looked like a hole in space shaped like a wolf. Its body was made of living darkness, and its eyes were like distant stars. I do not think Amy should try to approach this one, Jake said. Some creatures might be too dangerous even for her. But Amy was already at the window staring at the creature with the same fascination she had shown for Blue and the spider beasts. It is not evil, she said quietly. It is hungry, but not for food. It is hungry for something else. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Amy thought for a moment, trying to find the right words. Remember when Mommy died and I felt so empty inside? Like there was a hole where she used to be? That is what this creature feels like. It has a hole inside it and it is trying to fill it with the wrong things. The Voidwalker pressed against the walls of its containment, its form shifting and changing. But when Amy placed her hand against the window, the creature stopped moving and stared at her with its star-like eyes. "You are not scary," Amy said to the creature. "You are just very, very sad." The Voidwalker's form began to change, becoming less like a hungry void and more like a wounded animal. For the first time since its capture, it was not trying to escape or attack. It was just listening to a little girl who saw past its terrible appearance to the pain underneath. "I think," Amy said, "that you have been alone for so long that you forgot how to be anything else." And in that moment, everyone watching realized that Amy Morrison was not just taming dangerous creatures, she was healing them. The message came on a heavily encrypted signal from the edge of the galaxy. General Marcus Stone of the Outer Rim Defense Force was requesting permission to dock at Kepler Station with the most classified cargo in military history. When Jake read the message, his blood ran cold. "Shadowhounds," Jake said to Dr. Carter as they stood in the main command center. "He is bringing 3 Shadowhounds." Lisa looked up from her research notes, her face pale. "I thought those were just stories. Myths to scare children. They are real," Highkeeper Veltar said, his forearms trembling as he spoke. "My people have legends about them going back thousands of years. They are creatures that exist between dimensions, neither fully in our reality, nor completely outside it. They can phase through solid matter and tear holes in space itself." The station's main display screen activated, showing General Stone's weathered face. His gray hair and scarred features told the story of a man who had seen too much war. Behind him, Jake could see glimpses of a ship that looked more like a prison than a military vessel. "Commander Morrison," General Stone said, his voice carrying the weight of desperation, "I know this is asking a lot, but we are out of options. These creatures destroyed Outpost 7 and killed 300 of my best soldiers. If your daughter cannot help us understand them, we will have to use nuclear weapons to stop them." "Nuclear weapons?" Jake asked. "In space. They are heading toward the core worlds," Stone explained. "Population centers with billions of people. We cannot let them reach civilian areas, but conventional weapons do nothing to creatures that can phase in and out of reality." The first Shadowhound materialized in the station's largest containment facility, without anyone seeing it enter. One moment the chamber was empty, and the next moment there was something there that hurt to look at directly. It was roughly the size of a small spacecraft, with a shape that seemed to shift between that of a giant wolf and something that had no name in any language. Its form flickered between solid matter and translucent energy. When it moved, reality seemed to bend around it, creating visual distortions that made people's eyes water. Its claws were not made of any known material, but appeared to be condensed space-time that could cut through the fabric of existence itself. The second and third Shadowhounds appeared moments later, materializing out of thin air like nightmares made real. They moved around the containment chamber in patterns that defied three-dimensional thinking, sometimes appearing to occupy the same space as the walls, while remaining clearly visible. "The containment field is holding," reported Chief Engineer Danny Walsh, but his voice was shaking. "Barely. These things are testing our reality barriers from angles I did not know existed." Amy stood at the observation window, studying the creatures with the same calm attention she had given to all the others, but even she seemed affected by their otherworldly presence. She blinked frequently and rubbed her temples as if fighting a headache. "They are not from here," she said quietly. "Not just from another planet. From somewhere else entirely." "The readings are off the charts," Dr. Carter said, checking her instruments. "These creatures exist in at least 7 dimensions, simultaneously. How are you able to focus on them at all?" "I do not look at what they are," Amy replied. "I look at how they feel." The largest Shadowhound, which the military had designated Alpha, approached the barrier between dimensions and pressed against it. Where it touched, sparks of impossible colors appeared, and reality seemed to ripple like water. Amy, Jake said, I do not think this is safe. These creatures are too alien, too dangerous. But Amy had already made up her mind. They are scared, Daddy. More scared than any of the others. Imagine being lost in a place where nothing makes sense, where the very air feels wrong against your skin. Against every protocol and despite General Stone's direct orders, Amy activated the emergency release sequence that Dr. Carter had taught her. The dimensional barriers dissolved, and suddenly there was nothing between the three shadow hounds and the rest of the station except empty air. Alarms began screaming throughout the facility. Security teams rushed toward the containment area, but Jake ordered them to stop. If the creatures wanted to escape, no amount of weapons would stop them. And if Amy was right about them being scared, armed soldiers would only make things worse. Amy walked into the chamber alone, her small feet echoing in the vast space. The shadowhounds turned toward her, their forms solidifying slightly as they focused on this strange new presence. Alpha approached her with movements that seemed to bend space around its form. The creature's growl resonated on frequencies that made the station's hull vibrate. Its eyes, which looked like burning holes in reality, fixed on Amy with an intensity that made everyone watching fear for her safety. You are not from here, are you? Amy said, sitting cross-legged on the floor, to make herself appear smaller and less threatening. You are lost far from your pack's hunting grounds. Alpha stopped growling, its head tilted in a way that suggested confusion rather than aggression. The other two shadowhounds moved closer, their forms becoming more solid as they tried to understand. This small being who showed no fear. I know what it is like to be far from home, Amy continued. Daddy and I travel to lots of places, and sometimes I miss Earth so much it hurts. Do you miss your home? Alpha lowered its massive head, and for the first time in recorded history, one of these interdimensional predators made a sound that could only be described as mournful. It was a keening wail that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the normal universe, a cry of loneliness that touched something deep in everyone who heard it. It is okay to miss home, Amy whispered. But maybe you can find a new kind of family here. She reached out with one hand, letting it pass through Alpha's semi-corporeal form until somehow, impossibly, her touch found purchase. The creature's form solidified further, allowing her small hand to rest against what might have been its snout. The moment Amy made contact, something extraordinary happened. The chaotic dimensional distortions around the shadowhounds began to stabilize. Their forms became more consistent, more anchored to the reality everyone else shared. The painful visual effects that hurt to look at faded, replaced by a strange but beautiful sight. The creatures were not the formless nightmares they had appeared to be. Now that they were more solidly real, Amy could see that they had a lupine, grace with fur that seemed to be made of starlight and eyes that held ancient wisdom. They were still clearly not from this dimension, but they no longer looked like tears in the fabric of space. You are beautiful, Amy said with genuine wonder. You are like wolves made of dreams and starlight. The three shadowhounds moved closer, their aggressive postures melting away as they witnessed their pack leader's acceptance of this human child. Within an hour, all three creatures were responding to Amy's simple commands, not through dominance or fear, but through trust and understanding. Sit, Amy said gently, and Alpha immediately settled down beside her, careful not to disturb the dimensional stability they had achieved together. This is impossible, General Stone said over the communication system. These creatures have been rampaging across 3 star systems. They destroyed everything in their path. They were not rampaging, Amy said, stroking Alpha's starlight fur. They were looking for something, looking for a way home. But they could not find it, so they got angry and scared. Dr. Carter was frantically taking readings and making notes. The dimensional distortions have stabilized. Their energy signatures suggest they are no longer trying to tear holes in space-time. It is as if they have found what they were searching for. What were they searching for? Jake asked. Amy looked up at her father with the serious expression she wore when she was trying to explain something important to adults. Someone who could see them for what they really are instead of what everyone was afraid they might be. Alpha made a sound like distant thunder mixed with wind chimes, and Amy nodded as if she understood every word. The pack had found their guide, And for the first time since their arrival in this dimension, the Shadowhounds were at peace. 6 months later, Kepler Station looked completely different. What had once been a military research facility was now the galaxy's first interspecies communication center. Ships arrived daily from across known space, carrying creatures that everyone had given up as impossible to understand. Amy Morrison, now 9 years old, had successfully connected with over 60 different species that had been considered too dangerous or too alien for normal contact. The station's corridors were filled with the sounds of creatures that had once been feared throughout the galaxy. Blue the Vorthak had become something like the station's unofficial mascot. He followed Amy everywhere, his massive form somehow managing to move through doorways and corridors that seemed too small for him. The purple and blue lights under his crystalline scales had become a familiar sight to everyone on the station. The 3 crystal spider beasts from Andorian space had turned one of the cargo bays into an art gallery. Their webs were no longer weapons but beautiful sculptures that caught light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. Visitors came from hundreds of worlds just to see their creations. The Shadowhounds had perhaps changed the most. With Amy's help, they had learned to exist fully in normal space-time instead of flickering between dimensions. Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, as Amy had named them, now served as guides for ships traveling through the dangerous regions of space where reality was thin. Their ability to see across dimensions made them perfect navigators for areas that had been unmappable before. Dr. Lisa Carter had set up a permanent research center on the station. Her team was documenting everything they learned about interspecies communication, and their findings were changing how the galaxy thought about intelligence and emotion. The key factor appears to be human empathy, Lisa explained to a gathering of scientists from 12 different worlds. Humans, particularly children, have an unusual ability to project care and protection toward beings that are completely unlike themselves. Commander Veltar nodded his four-armed agreement. What humans call the nurturing instinct appears to operate on frequencies that transcend species boundaries. It is remarkable. In the main observation lounge, Amy sat reading a book to her usual audience. Blue lay beside her like an enormous guard dog, while the spider beasts hung from the ceiling in delicate crystal hammocks they had woven for themselves. The Shadowhounds flickered in and out of visibility, but they were clearly present and listening. And then the princess realized that the dragon was not trying to hurt anyone, Amy read from her tablet. He was just protecting his treasure because it was the only thing he had left from his family. Blue made a soft rumbling sound that Amy had learned meant he was thinking deeply about something. She scratched behind his sensory organs, which he had decided he liked being called ears. That is right, Blue. Sometimes when people are mean, it is because they are scared or sad inside. Jake watched from the doorway, still amazed by what his daughter had accomplished. The little girl who had once been afraid of the dark was now surrounded by creatures that could level cities, and they all treated her like their most precious friend. "Sir," Lieutenant Cooper said, approaching with a data pad, "we have received confirmation from the Galactic Council. The Rim Wars have officially ended." Jake looked up in surprise. The Rim Wars had been going on for over 50 years, with dozens of species fighting over territory and resources in the galaxy's outer regions. How is that possible? The Shadowhounds, Cooper explained. With their help, we have been able to map safe passage routes through previously dangerous space. Ships can now travel between the Rim worlds without having to fight over the few known safe paths. Trade has increased by 400% in just 6 months. Dr. Carter joined them, her face bright with excitement. It gets better. The Zephyrians and the Kethmori have signed a peace treaty. They are using Vorthaks as ambassadors between their species. Vorthaks as ambassadors? Jake asked. It turns out that Vorthaks have perfect memory and absolute honesty, Carter explained. They cannot lie or forget anything they have witnessed. Both sides trust them to carry messages and verify agreements. Amy looked up from her book and waved at the adults. "Daddy, can you come here? Alpha wants to show you something." Jake approached the group carefully. Even after 6 months, the Shadowhound still made him nervous. Alpha materialized more fully and made a sound like wind through crystal caves. "Says thank you," Amy translated. He says that before he met me, he thought all solid reality beings were enemies. Now he knows that some of them can be friends. Alpha's form shimmered, and suddenly Jake could see images in the air around the creature. They were pictures of other shadowhounds, dozens of them, living in what looked like a city made of crystallized space-time. His pack wants to meet humans, Amy said. They want to learn about friendship too. The implications were staggering. If the Shadowhound's home dimension could be reached safely, it would open up entirely new regions of space for exploration and trade. The creatures that had once been the galaxy's most feared predators could become guides to realms that no one had ever imagined. How many more are there? Jake asked. Amy listened as Alpha made more of his wind chime sounds. He says there are thousands of different kinds of creatures in the deep spaces between galaxies. Most of them have never seen our kind of reality before. They are curious about us. Dr. Carter was frantically making notes. This could change everything. We are not just talking about taming dangerous animals. We are talking about first contact with entirely new forms of life. Over the following weeks, representatives from across the galaxy came to Kepler Station to see Amy's work for themselves. The Galactic Council, which had been skeptical at first, now officially recognized her as the galaxy's first interspecies communication specialist. But Amy did not care about titles or official recognition. She was more interested in the new arrivals that came to the station every day. Creatures that had been locked away or hunted to near extinction were finding new homes and new purposes. The crystal spiders were teaching artists on dozens of worlds how to work with light and dimension in their sculptures. Blue and his fellow Vorthax were serving as living libraries, helping to preserve the histories and cultures of worlds that had been lost to war. The Shadowhounds were opening up new frontiers for exploration and discovery. You know what I think? Amy said to her father as they watched a new ship dock at the station. This one carried something called a singing mountain, a creature from a world where geology was alive and music was a form of communication. What do you think, baby? I think that maybe the reason people were scared of all these creatures is because they never tried to understand them. Everyone just saw teeth and claws and decided they were monsters. Jake nodded, watching as the singing mountain was carefully moved into a specially prepared chamber filled with resonant crystals. Even from a distance, he could hear the beautiful, haunting melodies it produced. But you saw something different. I saw friends who just did not know how to say hello yet, Amy said simply. That evening, as Amy read bedtime stories to her collection of galactic refugees, Jake realized that his daughter had given the galaxy something more valuable than any technology or weapon. She had given them the ability to see monsters as simply beings who had been misunderstood. The war beasts of 100 worlds had finally found peace, not through conquest or control, but through the simple recognition that even the most fearsome creatures needed someone to care about them. And sometimes that someone was just a human child who saw friends where others saw only fear.